Good morning and welcome to the Standing Committee meeting for Wednesday, March 22nd, 2023. First, can we have a motion to waive the rules of council?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All council meetings will continue to be live streamed on the city's website. Our first order of business is roll call. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Reverend Burgess.
Here.
Mr. Coghill. Ms. Gross. Mr. Kraus. Mrs. Kel-Smith.
Here.
Ms. Strasburger.
Here.
Ms. Warwick.
Here.
Mr. Wilson. Mr.
Here.
Lavelle, Chair.
Here.
6 members present.
Thank you. Our next order of business is public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that the rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation, which are or may be before city council. Profanity is not permitted. Once you are called, please restate your name and provide your neighborhood for the record. You will be given 3 minutes to speak. Our first registered speaker is Dr. Ronald Lynn Miller.
Dr. Ronald N. Miller, Bells Hoover, Global Intelligence Society U.S. National Candidate for President 2024. I can be reached at my primary Pittsburgh number 412-969-7997. I wish that a lot of public commenters would offer means by which to communicate with them. I would like to be able to do that. I emailed Mr. Aganey on the Globe Dome system, which I talked about yesterday in my public comment. I did so on 6/10/2022, 11:25 a.m. I received a reply 6/10/2022 at 1:44 p.m. It says, quote, from Ed Gainey to Dr. Ron Miller. Hello, Dr. Miller. Thank you for your outreach. I want to forward your message to the appropriate person, but I'm not sure to what you are referring. Would you please elaborate? Thank you. Best regards, Pamela Collier, Special Assistant Office of the Mayor. In other words, this was not from Ed Gainey. That is untrue. That is a lie. So I followed up on the 24th, and I said, among other things, I said this in my email to him on the 24th of June, 2022, to Ed Gainey from Ron Miller. I request your opinion, not a referral to anyone else. Again, I ask that you review my public comments 7 and 8 June 2022, especially 8 June 2022. I want to know what you think. I want to know what you think. Details of the RLM GIS Globe Dome system for our kids will be transmitted directly to you for your response, no one else. You must formally request these details. If the response is not from you, our evaluation will be that you personally have no response. I and the GIS will transmit it via the National Information Intelligence Network and the Global Information Intelligence Network, both of which were founded by me. I will do so nationwide through the NIIN and worldwide GIIN, and I will also furnish a transmission of your response to the National League of Cities. Mr. Gainey is a Pittsburgher of Black African descent who was elected with the support from the Black Political Empowerment Group because Mr. Gainey is black. And many of these people who did so live in the Hill District. Mr. Gainey supports the council effort to spend $80 million on housing in the Hill, and as far as I can tell, $0 for the Globe Dome project for our children. I find this disgraceful.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Naomi Mullen.
Here, shady trees, not shady deals in Bon Air. This is for Michael. First, do no harm is not just a rule of medicine. Government shall not harm the people or can be held accountable. Blockbusting and infliction of emotional distress has occurred against Bon Air. Those who oppose property owners of Bon Air do so at their own risk. Politicians and municipal employees are public servants. My husband was the dedicated model. employee that should be emulated by others. The Pennsylvania State Constitution says that government was created for the peace, safety, and happiness of we, the people. Decisions and actions that harm the people are not acceptable. There are elected and appointed officials that have proven themselves to be enemies of Bon Air. This is not advisable. Mayor Gainey, Councilman Coghill, and State Representative Benham have all pledged help for Bon Air. The green space, Memorial Green Space, will be beneficial to all ages and stages of people. A beautiful, calming place to enjoy fruit trees, flowers, and birds. Will the rest of City Council, the peace, safety, and happiness of the Bon Air neighborhood? The school board has proven itself detrimental. Will you be part of the solution? On June 20th, 2022, the detrimental Bon Air school building worsened and it became a disruptive and nuisance property. We have objected to apartments or anything other than the green space to replace the school. Tear it down. The building is a magnet to youth who broke into the school and needed to be arrested. Tear it down. Other neighborhoods have been blighted with worse. Do not allow it to happen to Bon Air. The outcry to the school board has proven futile. Put pressure on them to sell it to the city for $1. Tear it down. Now that McKinley Park is no longer in Bon Air, we want the school to become a green space as a replacement. Open deals, not shady deals in Bon Air. Even current PPS employees have said to me, the solution is to tear the building down to create a green space. Shady trees, not shady deals in Bon Air. Thank you.
Thank you. That exhausts our list of registered speakers. If there's anyone in chambers wishing to speak this morning, please come forward at this time. Provide your name, neighborhood for the record. You will also be given 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning and thank you. My name is Devin Gerard McLean, longtime resident of the Hill District, 15219. This is my first meeting here for the Finance and Law Committee. Being a black resident of your city, why wouldn't I want to be here? Noticing how some of this money is trickling out. Dude, since police want to be so much like soldiers in the U.S. military, they do not reimburse you for sewing on your new insignia when you get promoted. So, guys, that's going to have to come out of your pocket, I think. When my apartment building burned up, I asked my own city council member for $3,000 for relocation services because I thought I could do better than his only suggestion of moving to New Kensington. He told me that that was my best option because it was my only option. I said, guy, just write me a check for $3,000 and I can do better on my own. No, they said. I said, well, how about you help me write me a check for some driving lessons so I can at least apply for better jobs on the other side of this. No, I only wanted $3,000 and here it is, I can't wait for the next finance and law meeting to see what else you're paying for or propose to pay for. I didn't even really plan to come speak today. I missed the general meeting yesterday. Sorry about that, guys. At least now I know where to go when I request a check for the police breaking your arm or them laughing at you or the dereliction of city employees resulting in the detriment and oppression of certain populations in certain places. Transcripts. Your certifications and exams, certification registries. Since you're professional employees, you ought to be ready to pay for that stuff out of your own pocket, right? $110 for towels and mats. Sweeper repair. Sweatshirts for staff? No, the staff can pitch in and buy their own bloody t-shirts, guys. ServSafe certifications, $405. If you work in a Carson Street restaurant, you're gonna be paying for that out of your own pocket. Your boss isn't gonna pay that for you. Unless you're a bartender, maybe. Female bartender, not black. Reimbursement for lunch meeting.
Very much. Next speaker, please.
My name is Javon F. Brown. I live in the Hill District. First, I wanted to start off by, I know sometimes when Dr. Miller is speaking, it doesn't seem like they're paying any attention. But I heard when he was speaking about the Japanese and their color was red and yellow. Well, you have the golf building over there where they have the lights on the top of the building. I know I've seen it red and yellow, so maybe they know something about traditions with the Japanese. But those, sometimes those buildings that are lit up at night, I live right there and it's beautiful. Sometimes they're both blue and then they might be purple. Please, if you ever get a chance, look at it and you would be surprised at the different colors they have up there. I also wanted to say this to Mrs. McMullen. I hear you every week, and when you speak about your husband, I want you to understand that every time I hear that, it's like a tug at my heart. I cannot feel your pain, but I do feel your loss, because you've lost your husband. Keep speaking up, because what you're talking about, like when you say shady trees, not shady deals, well, you know how sometimes they do make shady deals. I want to also say and address this to Mr. Burgess and to the citizens. Like he said, Miss Brown came down and he said something about my son, about her, if it helps me with my son. No, what you didn't understand is that Mr. Burgess talks very negative to me, very negative. And what he's saying is comforting me. No, it wasn't comforting me. I wanted you to understand why I come down here and look in your eyes. My father taught me that at one time, your word was your bond, not here. And your handshake was better than the contract, a handshake. So you see when they be doing on TV, the man shakes his hand, that's better than a contract. But Jens will change the contract to fit Jens. I want you to understand I come down here because I don't want another mother have to go through what I did. All I'm saying is, why can't I find out what happened to my son? Or any other person, like the lady that was over there when I went to the police oversight for the prison, when her son was dead, killed at the jail. You had Mr. Burgess say, oh, citizens don't believe her about there's no mice in the food. Did you see where there's mice running? There is live mice, dead mice, and mice feces in the food. He tries to make me as a liar. I don't come down here just to be talking. I want you to listen to me, and maybe we can change some of this. Maybe we can change. That, oh, Mr. Burgess, they said he's not running, but he's sneaky enough to take and run after he makes sure that everybody else knows. Just have a nice day.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Any further speakers? Seeing none, that will excuse me. That'll move us on to our standing committee agenda. The first committee of the day is Finance and Law, chaired by myself. Our first deferred paper is Bill 1072.
Bill 1072, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances, Title 5, Traffic, Article 7, Parking, by creating a new Chapter 550, Lawrenceville Mobility Enhancement District.
Second.
May I?
Discussion, Councilman?
Thank you. It's just an update for council. Again, thank you for kind of letting this be on the agenda while we work through the community process. We've got a nice schedule laid out of community meetings. I'm sorry, what? To move away from Barb, because I've been, sorry, it's true, I've been sick, but I took a COVID test. And I know I don't want to get any more people sick. And So we have a nice schedule laid out between now and May of community meetings. We're working on some amendments, but I didn't want to introduce them today. And so I'd like to motion to hold until May 24th. I think that's the date, 9 weeks from now. Madam Clerk, I don't know if you can see it.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
May
Okay, motion to hold till May 24th.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill be held till May 24th. That takes us to Bill 1293.
Bill 1293, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Belinda Martin and her attorneys Friday and Cox in the amount of $27,500 relating to the full and final settlement of a case filed in the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill under new papers, Bill 1309.
Bill 1309, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Spillman, Thomas, and Battle for legal services in connection with the police litigation matter for an amount not to exceed $17,023.80.
Motion to hold for executive session.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Bill be held for executive session. Bill 1310.
Bill 1310, resolution authorizing the mayor and the city solicitor to enter into a professional services agreement or agreements with Campbell Durant PC in an amount not to exceed $30,000 for expert legal services related to litigation in the United States District Court for the Western District of Pennsylvania.
Motion to approve. Brief discussion. Is
President?
this the one we have the executive session on? I just recognize that Campbell and Durant name.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm just wondering if this is the one that also involved the contract for the policing, for the contracts? Okay. Just different. Okay, I just want to make sure. That's okay. Thank you. That's it. Motion to approve.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1311.
Bill 1311, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Finance to enter into an agreement or agreements with the Allegheny County Bar Association to provide legal advertising to the city of Pittsburgh for performing state-mandated advertising of treasurer sales.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That takes us to Bill 1312, and at the request of Director Gula, if we can make a motion for a 3-week hold.
Bill 1312, resolution authorizing the execution of quitclaim deeds conveying all of the city's right, title, and interest in and to the city-owned property located in the 15th Ward of the city at 624 Tesla Street, designated in the Deed Registry Office of Allegheny County as Block 55M, Lot 302, and Block 55M, Lot 305 to the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Bill be held 3 weeks. Madam Clerk, if you could read Bill 1313 and 1314 together, and we're going to ask for a motion to hold for a public hearing and an executive session.
Bill 1313, resolution amending Resolution 724 of 2022 entitled Resolution Making Appropriations to Pay the Expenses of Conducting the Public Business of the City of Pittsburgh and for meeting the debt charges thereof for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2023, so as to reopen the 2023 operating budget to update the revenue forecaster to better reflect fiscal year 2022 results, accommodate changes in the Bureau of Police in direct response to the ratified collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, and make changes to associated benefit calculations. And Bill 1314, resolution amending Resolution 745 of 2022, which authorizes the Stop the Violence Fund expenditures for the 2023 fiscal year by further updating current year appropriations in direct response to operating budget changes required by the ratified collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police.
Motion to hold for an executive session and a public hearing.
All those in,
Can I just say the executive session is as it relates to personnel? Thank you.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Both bills will be held for an executive session and a cablecast public hearing. Bill 1315.
Bill 1315, resolution authorizing pursuant to Chapter 210, acceptance of gifts to the city of the city code, the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Works to accept a donation from the Charles Street Area Corporation in the amount of $101,000 for the Cross Strauss Park renovation.
Motion to approve? I don't know where this is.
Sure.
Oh, Charles
Want me
Street.
to defer?
Yours.
I can explain it.
If you want to.
Sure. It's just the Charles Street Area Council has been working for over a year now, probably closer to 2, to get this parklet renovated. It's been their number one priority. They have raised, obviously, a significant amount of money. They're dedicating it to the city because the city is going to lead the effort to renovate it. But they've received gifts that they're going to turn over to the city so the city can comprehensively renovate it.
That's fantastic. So this is actually not currently a city park?
It's a very old city park. That part of the land is also owned by the school district. So we've had to work to consolidate the ownership of all the parcels. They've also been fundraising. It's also an early initiative for the choice funding application that we're going for to renovate Allegheny dwellings in this area. And so this is sort of like an early demonstration project.
That's wonderful. Was it a decommissioned park?
No, it's not decommissioned.
Okay.
It just hasn't been invested in 30
Okay.
years.
Got it. Got it. Well, congratulations. That's a wonderful project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Need a motion to approve the invoices.
So moved.
Need a second. Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Invoices are approved. Need a motion to approve the P cards.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? P cards are approved. We didn't need to waive the rules at all this.
Okay, good thing.
I saw your nervousness. That takes us to Public Safety and Wellness Committee, chaired by Councilman Coghill. We have one deferred paper, Bill 1249.
Bill 1249, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Safety to enter into an agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency and Operation Better Block for the purpose of receiving and spending grant funds in the amount of $2,500,000 to support the Safe Passages Program, which places community elders in schools to prevent violence.
Motion to approve with discussion. Sorry. I'm sorry, is this your? Come in. Solicitor Friesen, can you come to the table, please? So just a little clarification, a little bit for the public so that they understand what's going on, is we held this bill. I held it for a week. I thought I held it for in legal opinion. We went back and forth, and it was for a week. But one of the concerns I had at the time was the way that there was already somebody identified, an organization identified who would be receiving the funds. It was confusing because it's to do work in this Pittsburgh Public Schools, but yet the city of Pittsburgh is the one, applying and receiving the grant funding. It's state funding. And after some further research that Melissa and the Community Engagement Office did, she found that there was, I think, $14 million for similar kind of work, Stop the Violence kind of work, in addition to all the other Stop the Violence funds that we have. And this was to stop the violence and to reduce gun violence for most of the grants, all from state grants. So she discovered that. So I started asking questions a little bit about it and why we were in the middle of this when it's really not us doing it's really Pittsburgh Public Schools buildings. So. And I think that it was mostly the concern of how the group was identified without an RFQ or anything like that. And Solicitor Friesen, we got an opinion from the law department. Do you want to explain a little bit about that? I don't know if you want to, or if you want them to come down.
I would rather have the law department come and explain this
Yeah.
opinion.
She was just here.
I mean, to the extent I can walk you through what the opinion says and provide you the legal language that's missing from it. That I think will help you make an informed decision, because right now it just cites law, like 16102BA2, without telling you what it is. So I thought you might at least want to know what the law says that they cite in there so you can make an informed decision, if you want.
Well, I think we all want to be informed.
Yeah,
That's
great,
why, That's why we
fantastic.
held it. That's why we want to make sure that whatever we're doing is right. But we also don't want to jeopardize and not do something, not receive the
Right.
dollars if it's going to be able to help stem violence somewhere. But honestly, it's one of the things I keep talking about is the public is seeing all these dollars come into this city from all sorts of different directions, state, federal, private dollars, local dollars, and yet they're seeing the increase in crime. I think if everybody saw a decrease in, especially in the violent crimes and homicides, I think everybody'd feel a little bit, okay, well, at least maybe this is working. That's the concern, I think, is the public's calling us, they're asking questions. And we want to make sure that we're giving right answers. But I do think that this program, I mean, I've seen when we've done programs similar to this in the city of Pittsburgh, and with other organizations, and they've seemed to work really well too. So I don't know, I'm not questioning the effectiveness of this type of program. It's the way the funding came in is what I want to make sure we're
Sure,
good with.
it's about process, and just for the record, I'm Daniel Friedson, solicitor to
Yes,
City
I know.
Council. And so the gist of this opinion, and let me just back up a little bit to the bigger context here. The bigger context here is that we have a lot of pilot programs, and we have a lot of nonprofit partners that we're selecting and saying they're a nonprofit partner of the city of Pittsburgh. They're authorized to apply for grants in the city's name. They're authorized to use the city's name in their programming, and essentially they're holding themselves out as a partner, and they think they have every right to do so. However, there's a process. And essentially, in my opinion, what the thinking error is across the board is confusing this concept of when we need to get the lowest responsible bidder and the analyses that's used for that versus when we need a contract or at least some other sort of process. And those other kinds of processes can be a finding and a determination that's signed off on by OMB that this is either a sole source or a single source. And the gist of this particular opinion cites 16102B(a)(2) as the sole source exemption. But again, that means you don't need to go get a lowest responsible bidder, but that doesn't mean that you don't need to select them some other way and demonstrate and provide evidence that a process was used to select them as either a sole source or a single source. So to read you the language, first of all, if you go up to 16102A, C, it says, sole source is contingent upon a written waiver by OMB, which I don't believe we have in this particular case.
So, but if we got that, would it satisfy this?
Secondly, if I may, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Sole source is defined in the law that's quoted is a contract, so it's still a contract. So we still need to see a contract. And it's documented to fall into one of the three categories. The competition's precluded because of the existence of patent rights, copyrights, or related proprietary claims. Does Operation Better Block have a patent or a copyright on the service that we're hiring them for? Is this to walk kids to school and back to and from school? Do you know what this program's for? I don't know.
Well, from what I looked into, it's to build some type of mentorship between the peers, peer-to-peer mentoring, and adults coming into the schools.
Okay.
Yeah, I've
So
seen
it's
it
not
happen.
likely that they
So I
have
want
a
to be
patent.
honest. I've seen this happen, and it has been successful in places
Sure.
that I've seen it happen.
Not
I'm
complaining.
not questioning this.
Nobody's
successfulness.
questioning about
Okay.
the effectiveness of the organization.
Yeah.
It's about, they beat you over the head in law school that the ends don't justify the means, right? So the means have to be consistent, and they have to be,
Okay.
so that, if I may continue, please.
Well, I'm going to let you.
Let me-
I'm going to say this. Wait a minute. I'm going
I'm
to say
sorry.
this. Yeah, I'm going to say this. What I want to know is, do you see a path that we can correct anything here?
Yeah, we can get, well, yeah, so if we follow the law, another one is where the supplier is the only identifiable source of this product or service, and they might be, I just don't know. I don't know if there was a process to determine that. And the last one is where the distributor or service provider has exclusive franchise or operating agreement with the supplier or manufacturer of goods. So if OMB can sign off and say Operation Better Block
Could you come to the table, solicitor, please?
has a patent or a copyright or is the only supplier of this particular service or has a exclusive franchise, then I would agree with this, but I just don't know. I haven't seen any documentation from OMB, so that's about as far as I can take it. Yeah, well, there's other things that we look for when we do the contract. It's not just about whether or not money changes hands or whether or not they're a nonprofit. It's also about whether or not they're debarred from doing business with the city. There may be 1,000 other reasons why we may or may not want to contract with somebody, even if they are sole source or even if they are a nonprofit. We still have to go through the processes to make sure that we're complying with all of our contracting laws.
Solicitor, we're trying to find a path forward here that's legal. And so you have an opinion that you sent to council. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Council President, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about it. I mean, my opinion that I sent to council is privileged, and if we discuss it in open air, it eliminates the privilege. So
I think
don't
we're
know.
okay with that. Does anybody have any objections to that? Yes, I have an objection. You do? Okay. Okay. Because you want to set a precedence. Okay. Okay. So we're trying to find a path forward here that we feel is legal. We're hearing from our solicitor. We saw your opinion yesterday. Nobody wants to hold this up because we think that it could be, if it's beneficial, we don't want to do anything to jeopardize any. With all the crime happening and all the violence happening, we want to do everything we can to make sure that we're putting forward any effort to slow some of the violence or to minimize violence in the city, especially homicides. And this program seems to have worked well at Peary. And I know that similar programs have worked well across the city school district. But I'm trying to find a path forward, and I'm wondering what the best option is here. Did you hear any of our solicitor's concerns?
I heard a little bit of it. Let me say this. The law department, there is sole source justifications. I think it is in council's rights to decide whether or not they want to accept the sole source justification or if they want to have whatever the contract is put through an RFP process. So
If an RFP, can you come to the table? I'm sorry. Introduce yourself to the public.
Jake Pollack, Director of the Office of Management and Budget.
Thank you. And I didn't anticipate all of you coming to the table, so I apologize. I would have given you a little heads up. Anyway, for this, what would an RFQ or RFP process look like?
The question is really not cost. We'd have to return the grant at that point because the Operation Better Block was written in by the Pennsylvania Center on Crime and Delinquency into the terms of the grant agreement. So to seek to modify the partnership would require us to, I guess I shouldn't say we would have to return the grant, but it would certainly put the funds in jeopardy. And that, at its core, is, I think, the justification for the sole source selection. I mean, one, Operation Better Block is already the operator of this program at one location. And second, is the identified partner in the terms of the grant agreement itself. I don't know the extent to which that constitutes, it's not a patent, but to the council solicitor's point, I don't know if that constitutes a license or I believe it's a similar construct, but I'm not an attorney, so I can't speak to that point. But it is, they are an identified participant in the terms of the grant agreement, which is why we believe a sole source selection is justified in this case.
I'm going to turn it over to Councilwoman Gross, if you don't mind. And then I'm going to come back, because I do have a couple more things I want to say. Do you mind, Councilwoman Gross? No.
If I may,
No.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry.
So I've said before about this specific project that I'm really excited about the concept, and I'm really excited to see it expand. And I do think when we've been talking about youth and violence in our city and talking about things like reopening pools, we're really talking about kind of getting more grown-ups, together with our kids. And that's the real core concept here, and I really think it has value. But I also said that I wanted in the future to explore ways that maybe council authorize these grant requests ahead of time, because they shouldn't just be coming to us at the last minute, right? And so very many times it's like, well, there's this project, maybe it's even not what the community, a neighborhood's priorities were. Let's say it's a neighborhood project, and the neighborhood had other projects that were their priorities, but we're faced with rejecting some outside dollars, and then we're uncomfortable with that, so we receive the dollars. In this case, I think it's also true that the Operation Better Block being not just written into the grant contract, but being a critical part of the applying for the outside dollars situates it uniquely. And so these dollars would not be coming to the city if not for Operation Better Block. And so I'm comfortable if we kind of keep the discussion about procedures in other cases, which I would very much like to have, and I do happen to have a pile about 10 inches or 12 inches high on Act 161 in my office, which I'm sure if you see my office, you can believe. And I would very much like to engage. I'm entirely comfortable with this vote today on this project, but I do think that we have a conversation about Chapter 161 that we need to have. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
There's a path
I'll
forward,
come back.
though.
I'll come back.
I certainly agree with Councilwoman Gross that I would like a formal process to review grant applications, or even a grant plan that we can give input into, rather than just seeing the plan once it's already done or hearing about the grants before they're made. And that goes for everything across the board. So that, I think that would be helpful. As far as I don't want to say, because, I don't want to sort of walk into to folks saying, well, of course, don't we have to, question every dollar? Of course we do, right? That's our job, of course. But as a general point, just about Stop the Violence funding in general, this notion that the public has, which is very real, that nothing's being done, right? There's still kids getting shot in the street. This is all this money and nothing's happening. That is a narrative I feel that is being perpetuated at this table, oftentimes justified or not justified. And I want to say that this work, that the organizations that we are funding to do this work, I've said it before, these are community organizations and others that have been doing this work for years, but are now for the first time sort of getting, I won't even say adequate funding, but just getting real funding to do the work. And we're asking for instant results. When it comes to violence intervention, violence prevention, I mean, these are systemic problems and they take years to resolve. So you're not going to see one day to the next, like, oh, last summer were this many shootings and this summer this, and we can make a direct line between, whatever particular organization is working in whatever neighborhood. These are if you read the research on the effectiveness of these programs, and they are effective, the research shows over periods of 5 years, 3-5 years. So, when it comes to the public, I understand that it's upsetting, right? You see shootings on the news every day. I would love for the media to also change their narrative, right? To also talk about the good that these programs are doing and the specifics on the work that these programs are doing here in Pittsburgh. So that's, just overall, of course, I understand that's our job here at council to, question the money and where it's going and all of that, but just overall, when it comes to, this type of programming, it deserves our support. I really think that it does, just overall. It deserves the public's support, it deserves our support, and it deserves the media's support. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Second round, Madam President.
Thank you. I just, I'm going to respond to some of those comments because I didn't move here 6 years ago just to run for office. I put my time into this community, and I have done a lot of the same type of work throughout the city of Pittsburgh. And I didn't just work in one section, I worked all over. When I bring a concern to the table, it's because I'm hearing from the public across the city of Pittsburgh. And it is because they are saying they don't see. And if it's your child getting shot, if it's your child afraid to walk down the street, you're bringing the concern to your constituents or to your representative elected officials to say something needs done. So when you're in that situation and you have to worry about your kids walking across the street or down the street or to school or being in school, then I would hope that you would feel comfortable enough to come to your elected official and say something needs done more than what's being done, and that they could question where their dollars are going. And so for me, I want to see a reduction in violent crimes and homicides in the city of Pittsburgh. What I saw, since we've been putting a ton of money into all this, is an increase. And what other people have seen has been an increase in some of the most egregious crimes in the city of Pittsburgh. That doesn't mean that something won't come from all this. That doesn't mean we devalue what people are doing. I value what they do every single day. I worked with a lot of these groups for years. I can tell you some of these people and what they do and how they put their own money into things and how they spend their own time in the evenings on stuff. I know what some of them are doing. But that doesn't mean that we don't have to ask these questions when they come to the table. And that doesn't mean that there's not a process that we need to follow here for City Council to weaken our stance as the elected body in charge of this budget. And so what I'm going to say is that I think that we need to change the way grants are coming to this table. Oftentimes it does seem like they're for public safety, so we don't want to jeopardize the public safety, so we vote for them. And in the meantime, there's questions. There's a lot of questions about how it happened, why one organization was chosen over another. Now, Operation Better Block, I've heard good things. I've heard both. I've heard different sides of things, but I've also heard that there were some concerns about a previous grant and the capacity of carrying out a previous grant. So I want to make sure that we're not giving money to somebody who can't fulfill the grant obligations. I don't know the reality of all that, so I don't want to say anything negative about the organization because I think that they do, from what I've heard, a decent job in some things. But I do want to say that I do think that there's a lot of good happening, and we're not going to say that that's something bad, everything is all bad. There are some good things happening. But I think that even this administration, one of the things Mayor Gainey has been very, very vocal about is trying to stop the violence in the city of Pittsburgh and making sure our kids are safe going to and from schools. He's been engaged in the schools, so I think that he would also want to make sure we're holding people accountable. With that said, Solicitor Friedson, do you see a path forward? You mentioned that you see.
I do, and I apologize. I'm very sorry if I stepped out of turn there. I was just so enthusiastic about getting us to yes. But that said, I don't change my position that a contract is still needed and a process is still needed. And so something from OMB, in writing that says this is how we came to select this particular vendor would be helpful. But to the extent that 161 does provide a solution for this particular case, because if it's true that Operation Better Block was presented by the granting agency, right, that's a much narrower, easier path to go through than to say that they're sole source, because 161.02BA4 provides you that exception within our process. It says, contracts in compliance with terms and conditions of a grant, right, are exempt from a competitive process, not exempt from a contract that still needs to come to council. So I think the process moving forward would be you select somebody that you want us to be a partner, and it's authorizing us to enter into a partnership agreement of sorts, a limited partnership agreement for the purposes of applying for this, that, and the other thing, and then a separate one for entering into that grant agreement with that partner would probably be the cleanest process, in my opinion.
Madam President, may I?
Please.
I just can confirm that they were written into the agreement and that is the basis under 161 on which this arrangement exists. We can certainly work to document that more clearly to the extent that there's documentation missing. But I just, for the record, can confirm that that's the rationale for sole source in this instance.
Can we confirm who's going to be working on this grant? Do you know anything about that?
Who's going to be, you mean it like administering?
On behalf of Operation Better Block. I know, is Ty Lee there?
Ty Lee is, I believe, their lead from the Operation Better Block side on this project. Certainly he is their lead at the Perry pilot, if you will, that led to this conversation. I imagine that in order to execute on an increased scope of the project, it would require more folks to be involved, and I think that will largely be determined once the grant funds are fully secured.
I think
But yes,
Councilwoman Gross and I looked at some of the salary, and it was pretty hefty for the salary side of this grant. Do you anticipate any other grants coming in to match this from the state?
I apologize, I'm not sure I'm
Do
following the
you
question.
anticipate any additional grant funding for this type of, for this exact project?
I do not anticipate any additional grant funding for this project. I believe with this funding, we'll be able to implement the scope of work described here, which would expand that successful program to other schools.
I'll be honest, but Tylee is one of the reasons I'm okay with it, because I do think that he does great work. So I'm okay with that part. But I don't like the way this came to council. I'm not going to vote for anything like this ever again if it comes to council this way. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's to put 10 police officers on the street. I won't vote for anything like this again. But what I will say is that we are going to work on a process, and we'll work with Councilwoman Gross too, on a process coming forward on how we accept grants and how grants come or don't come before City Council. That's it for me. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm okay with this moving forward if everybody else is.
Thank you. Anyone else second round? If not, I'll simply say, similar to what Councilman Gross said, sort of but for test, like but for OBB, these dollars would not be coming into the city. Therefore, I think it passes. And I just did read the legal opinion, so I think it does pass the muster. To your question of will it be any other dollars? Not right now, but I certainly would anticipate 2 years from now, the city support program, assuming its success, that is already based off of the pilot that was very successful.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you for saying that, Mr. Chairman. I didn't mean that we wouldn't seek future grant funding at some future point to continue the work, just that the scope of work as defined here should be fully supported by this grant.
With that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Thank you all for being here
Thank
with
you all.
us. Where we at? That takes us to Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, which is chaired by Councilman Kraus. We have one supplemental paper, Bill 1332.
Bill 1332, resolution providing for a supplemental agreement or agreements with Michael Baker International, Inc. for costs associated with the Charles Anderson Bridge project, providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $3,130,324.66, an increase of $1,955,000 from the previously executed agreement.
Motion to approve?
Second discussion. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. No, it's fine.
I heard a voice and I saw a hand. Whomever would like to go first.
Oh, yeah, so I was just we have, if you all like to come to the table just to sort of give us an overview of what's going on with the bridge.
Good morning. Kim Lucas, Director for the City of Pittsburgh's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure.
Eric Setzler, Chief Engineer in Domi.
So what you have in front of you right now is a request to authorize a supplement to our Michael Baker contract, which we already have for preliminary engineering for the Charles Anderson Bridge Rehabilitation Project. The supplement will allow us to advance into final design for that bridge project, which is federally funded, so that we can expedite the overall project. As everyone at this table probably knows, the Charles Anderson Bridge was closed late January, early February of this year after we performed additional structural analyses on it and determined that it needed to be closed for safety. At that time, we thought that we may be able to perform interim repairs in order to open the bridge right back up. But after looking at the cost of what those interim repairs would be and looking at the timeliness of being able to actually complete those structural repairs, we realized that it would be more advantageous to the city to expedite the long-term rehab project, because doing the repairs would look like finding local money to fund them, completing them over a number of months, reopening the bridge just to close it again in order to start the rehab project. So in order to leverage federal funding, which was already in the pipeline for this project, and to get the bridge open in a permanent status as soon as possible, we have recommended that we advance the overall rehab project. Within that, and I think it's included in this scope, there's an adjacent bridge that has also been identified in the park. And Eric, Chief Engineer, can talk a little bit more about that. But we also think that if we're able to expedite this project, we can get that second bridge within this design as well, so that instead of shutting down or having a load restriction on another bridge that's really close to this one, we can shut the road, keep it closed once, and take care of two major projects.
Yeah, that's correct. And the adjacent bridge is the Panther Hollow overpass, which is right next to the Shenley Pool. Boulevard of the Allies goes over, Panther Hollow goes under and kind of blends in. So that bridge, based on recent inspection results, is going to need load posted when the road reopens. So we were in a situation, if we just finished up Charles Anderson as we had been planning, we would remove the load posting from Charles Anderson, but then still have a load posting on a bridge a couple hundred yards down the road. And PennDOT was supportive of us as well, of getting that rolled into this project, get both bridges done at once, and then put it on the fast track.
Great, yeah, thank you. And I did want to say, because there was, I think, a few members of council on it, a very rude email this morning about detours and whatnot. I just want to say, at least in my district, I have, since the bridge has been closed, I think I have had not a single complaint about traffic and issues and the routing. So thank you for that, and for the work you're doing on this project. That's all for me.
Thank you. So I want to say that at first I was, before I saw some of the news this morning, I was under the impression that we would be doing the first scenario, spending taxpayer dollars to make some minor repairs, only to then spend more money, potentially like tearing down those repairs and rebuilding, in a more substantial way. So waste of money. Glad we're not doing that. It's fully disappointing for everyone that we're going to have to now delay until, do we know when? I don't know if you want to say an exact date. I saw 2024 or 2025.
We don't know. I know the original rehab project had scheduled, 27 for a bridge reopening, and this would greatly improve that.
Sure. So I know that some questions are, we saw the breakneck speed at which the Fern Hollow Bridge was repaired. Are you at liberty to tell us, or can you very generally tell us why, that one, and I'm not trying to make comparisons, but just for a basic understanding, like, we're going as fast as we can, we are expediting in the way that we can. It's still not like less than a year like that one was.
I'm happy to start, and then Eric, anything I missed, please jump in. Fern Hollow, two major components there. Fern Hollow was declared as an emergency all the way at the state level. What that did was unlock a lot of processes with regards to procurement, with regards to being able to concurrently design and construct that bridge, and it unlocked immediate funding for PennDOT to be able to do that work. It also was a complete start from scratch, brand new bridge, and I have learned from my my experts here that doing things like steel repairs and rehab is actually more complicated than starting from scratch and bringing in some precast elements and putting them together in place. And so the complexity of the structure, and the reason it's a rehab and not a brand new bridge, is because it's historic. And so part of this preliminary engineering contract that we've had for a few years now included that analysis that said, hey, are you allowed to build a brand new bridge, or do you have to go the historic route? And it was determined through that, federally overseen process that we have to rehab. And so it's just more complex. In addition to, we don't have the green light to just kind of do really expedited procurement and things like this. So what we've brought today is our attempt at doing the fastest possible means within the rights that we have as a city within the Commonwealth. Eric, is there anything that I might have left off?
No, I think that the emergency declarations at the city and state level were key to that, and everyone really did come together, and it was the number one project on everybody's radar, from the city to PennDOT to FHWA to the contractor, the designer, all the suppliers. And there were probably a lot of other projects whose procurement got bumped because this one rose to the top. So it was a great success, but you can't do it all the time. But we do, for Charles Anderson, the city and PennDOT and FHWA, we are committed within the typical process to accelerate things as fast as possible. Last week, SPC did get construction funding starting in 2024, and, we intend to make use of that.
The only other thing I'll sort of note, which is going to be the case as we tackle more and more bridges in the city, is, I can attest personally, like trying to get home every day. I've tried every possible route, which includes through Councilwoman Warwick's district. So I know the routes that people are taking otherwise, which sometimes are South Oakland, sometimes are Oakland, sometimes are through, Greenfield, and anything we can do to keep eyes on those routes to ensure that as people are frustrated, speeding, trying to rush to childcare to pick up their kid, for instance, like me, that those routes are as safe and calm as possible as well. So it's really just something I know you do anyway, and I noticed that during the Fern Hollow Bridge replacement, but would be, some extra eyes on those detours would be great.
Absolutely, and to follow up on Councilmember Warwick's note earlier about a request to improve detour signage, we actually have done another round of improvements since we got that first request, and we're gonna run it again. We're gonna go out and lay eyes on it again this week to see if there are opportunities for improvement. So we do continually monitor as well.
First round, Councilman Wilson.
Thank you, Director. You said that the SPC, they sped up their process as well. Can you explain that? Like what?
Sure.
Like how did they get prompted to do that?
So we knew that if we wanted to move up construction to get that 2027 open date sooner, the money in the long-range plan and the TIP that SPC oversees was budgeted in years that were not 2023. They were future years, I think maybe 25,
27.
20, all the way in 27.
Construction funding was not listed until 2027, until last week.
So we went to them saying, if we want to be able to use federal money to expedite the design and construction for this project, then that 2027 money needed to be moved up earlier. And so we submitted that request to them to ask them to look for opportunities, along with PennDOT, because they can't just make up money in a year. There had to be some substitutions with other projects. So we've worked out, and especially Deputy Director Jeff Scallican worked out with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to switch around with some of their projects that had been funded in earlier years to front load the money for the city's project.
And I guess so SPC didn't necessarily expedite their process necessarily, but they worked with the city and PennDOT, as the director said, to shift the money around and make it available.
It sounds like they're waiting for our direction. So it sounds like they're waiting for our direction. They're saying, what are your priorities? And you show that in your budget, and then we'll move the money, as we see it on your side.
Yes,
Yeah.
we submit the request to them for that adjustment. It comes from the city for that, and PennDOT.
And it's a collaborative process. I mean, it's the city, it's all the counties in the area, it's PennDOT districts. So everybody wants the same money. So you got to work together and see what's ready and what can be done to shift things around and move projects to the top when needed.
And with the budget that was passed, there was an increase in, there was a suggestion by the administration to create, and I think we saw in the budget there was funding to create like a team on our side, like DPW workers to go and make small repairs to
A bridge maintenance division.
Yeah, bridge maintenance division.
What was authorized in this year's budget is to hire a bridge maintenance supervisor in advance of standing up a bridge maintenance division. Hopefully those would get staffed next year. And so that would take care of hopefully things like flushing, things like maybe minor repairs and maintenance, so that we don't have to rely on contractors, we don't have to pay those costs, and we can have better control over routine maintenance.
And why is it going to take until next year?
We were not given the positions in the budget this year to hire those folks.
I'm like a year behind.
We were given
So wait, with 2023 budget, so then.
So it would probably, and that's of course.
Oh wait, that wasn't the 2024 line?
The 2023 budget has given us a position to hire a bridge maintenance supervisor. So we are in the process of hiring that individual with the anticipation, I hope, through council and the mayor's office, that we will get actual employees for the bridge maintenance division next year.
You're saying the supervisor we hired this year then?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's
this year.
budgeted for this year
Yeah.
for the supervisor.
Right, okay.
And we even were
I thought I heard
recent-
you say next year.
For their staff,
Oh, for the staff. Gotcha.
yes.
Gotcha.
But the
I
supervisor
heard it the other
positions,
opposite
oh,
way.
I
Thanks.
apologize. And we recently just found out this week we were awarded some grant money to start building up the equipment for that group. And so we're really excited that we were able to leverage external sources to start to build that capacity in-house.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Lori?
Yeah, I just, because I wanted to ask as well, so with regards to the Swinburne Bridge, which I think is also getting some repairs, will this increase, because I know that if both bridges are closed at the same time, that is going to create some issues. So will this improve our chances of getting one bridge done before we do the other, or at least minimizing the time that both are close?
I would say yes. We had been working on both projects and trying to get through the design and, see where things fall. We now know that we're going to have Charles Anderson probably going first.
Okay.
And, there's still a lot of unknowns as we work through the Swinburne process, but, we're very aware of how the two bridges relate to each other.
And could you explain just a little, because I know there were some repairs or to be made or have just been made to Swinburne as well?
So a couple months back, we did some temporary repairs on the Greenfield Avenue side, underneath one of the bearings where the steel superstructure rests on the abutment. That was a temporary repair. We will be going back out in the next couple months here to do a more permanent repair of that location, which will get us through to the project.
Okay. And then my last question for Charles Anderson, it's open for bikes and pedestrians right now. Is that right? So,
yes.
and will it stay open until until actual work begins?
That's the current plan. Unless we have new information at some point, it will remain open until construction for
Okay.
bikes and pedestrians.
Okay. A little silver lining.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Further discussion? If not, just a thank you. The last time you were here, I asked you about infrastructure in and around Kappa, and you sent a very full, comprehensive response to me very quickly. And as I read it, I took a call, and then I forgot to respond to you. So I just want to say thank you to acknowledge that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Thank you for being here. That takes us to our last committee of the day, Intergovernmental and Educational Affairs Committee, which is chaired by Councilwoman Gross. We have one bill, Bill 1308.
Bill 1308, resolution adopting the plan revision to the City of Pittsburgh's official sewage facilities plan for the Lawrence Hall project, which proposes the improvements to an existing building for the use of a food hall and bar. The site address is 4609 Butler Street, 9th Ward.
Motion to approve?
Second.
And I'll just briefly say that congratulations to this project and the community. It's been a kind of a long battle, but everyone's looking forward to it moving forward.
Where's it at, Councilwoman?
It's up, it's on Butler Street, and it was like a repair shop, kind of like a transmission shop. And it got all of its approvals, but then it was sued over its parking by a constituent, and then has succeeded in figuring out that solution. So, yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That exhausts our agenda for today. We do have meeting announcements. Next week, council will hold our regular and standing committee meetings on Tuesday, March 28th and Wednesday, March 29th at 10 a.m. Speaker registration will close at 9 a.m. the day of the meeting. To register to speak at these meetings and hearings, please fill out the sign-up form on the council meeting webpage. You may also call the clerk's office at 412-255-2138. Anything from members, Madam President?
I just real briefly want to congratulate Laura and Director Schmidt and all those who've been working in the Office of Community Health and Safety. They sent their first few social workers out with the police, teaming up with the police, and and it seems to be working really, really well. So they did a pilot and then or test run, and now they're out there. So I just want to congratulate them on the work that they're doing, and I want to also mention that so the public knows that the resource committee that we put together has been meeting. They started their first meeting. You have some additional meetings coming up, and you'll be doing a public meeting, correct?
Yes, we had our first meeting last week.
Okay.
In Anthony Coghill's district.
Okay.
At the rec center across from Carrot. I
Okay.
can't think of the name now. Productive meeting. We have another meeting in 2 weeks at Emmons Recreation Center, where it's going to be specifically a meeting with youth from across the city to hear their perspective on what they need.
Oh, cool.
And then we'll also put together a series of public meetings.
Oh, that's
that I need
good.
to talk to you
And I'm
about.
glad okay, good. And I'm glad you're doing the ones with the youth too. One of the things I hope that they do is give the public a chance who are these groups or who are doing some of the work. Some are doing the work, some are not. I wish they'd give them a chance to, speak and be a part of it too, and what they think could be helpful. But I do want to say thank you to you and to all those who are serving on it, because I know that the meetings are set, whether or not you can attend or not, they are set. And you try to do the best you can to get to these meetings. So I just want to thank you all for your efforts. Thank you.
Anything else from members? If not, motion to excuse the absent member, approve the minutes and adjourn the meeting.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.